Okay, we're live here on You're Not Terribly Important to Me, number 12. So we're kind of plugging away, even though I take weeks at a time off from this podcast, from you guys. If I have any consistent audience, so thank you once again for showing up. I'm getting the hang of it and starting to get in the, trying to do things more frequently so they become more habitual. So, but we're streaming on X/Twitter as well as YouTube. So hopefully, the audience will keep growing. And I started a couple minutes early here just to sort of jump in because, I haven't done this in a while. I just kind of want to get my screen set up here and figured I might as well start talking away. Um, if anybody is watching this that has watched the last couple of Barroom episodes, I feel like I've talked way more than I usually do. It's just like, not exactly on my A game. So hopefully I can make up for it by having a decent episode here. But there's a few things I want to talk about in today's podcast. First being sort of this understanding of screenwriting and screenwriters and how important the screenplay is. And there's a lot of debate about this. There's a lot of discussion about, what makes a great movie, and is it the screenplay? Is it there in the bones of the story, in the the plot, the narrative, the character, the arc, etc.? What makes it memorable? What makes it something that you want to return to time and again, that makes boatloads of money at the box office even, you know what I mean? So, and I've always, diverted from, you know, people who love the studio system and revere what it created, and then you have the new school, which is like, you should kiss screenwriters' asses for everything, because they're the creators of the story, and you should honor them as much as you can. And certainly that's tied in with the strikes that we had last year. But you know I think there's a big misconception. I mean, traditionally, like the screenwriter, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. They're very common. They're, you know what I mean? And while it's true, they provide the milieu that is used to create a movie. The actual screenplay can go through so many changes, good and bad. There are good examples of this, and invariably a lot of bad examples of it. But, there's so many times when somebody gets credit for the screenplay, and it's like, I mean, the director put in 40%, 50%. It's why so many of the great directors write their own scripts. The writer director, the auteur, the thing I talk about all the time. It's, you can obviously you can see my bias in revering those artists the most, just because they have a full understanding of what they are making, of what they are crafting. But it's also about control. It's about being able to say, no, I have final cut. This is my script. This is what I'm making. If something doesn't work, we can work around it. We can deal with it at the time. But really, this is, I'm going to make. I have it in mind to make the movie I wrote in the screenplay. So, and there's too many examples to really get into the weeds, or have a overarching opinion. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, there's such a you can have good movies made in so many different ways, whether it's done completely at the script level, like how Quentin Tarantino does it, or Christopher Nolan does it. Like, again, these are the writer directors. But something can change over time, and we're going to hear this. I uploaded this from the Bret Easton Ellis podcast because it's one of the best film podcasts out there. By the way, he is borderline brilliant. Bret Easton Ellis is brilliant on this, and really, it's just because he's kind of a vociferous. Just a nonstop consumer of movies ever since he was little, and had a passionate, he had a passionate journeying to the movie theaters of Southern California in the 70s. So I've really enjoyed listening to his podcast since 2013. I know I uploaded his kind of take on Oppenheimer, his sort of revision on Oppenheimer last year, admitting being wrong, which was nice. But no, he's going to talk about Robert Town here in Chinatown. is considered to be, if you know the lore of it a little bit, the greatest screenplay ever written. And we can debate that, whether that's true or not. But Roman Polanski, that's his movie. As much as Robert Towne wrote the screenplay, it was altered enough, and it had Polanski's input enough where, especially the ending, that was Polanski's idea. And look, Chinatown is a brilliant film, and it's brilliant for a lot of different reasons. But what really cements it, in the lexicon of great films is the ending. It is that ending. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. It's the distillation of all those themes coming to a head. And it's like the truth was there the whole time. You just couldn't see it because you didn't want to. You know what I mean? And that kind of, and I don't know that you get there with Robert Towne's version. In fact, I know you don't. It's really, again, it's that pessimism. It's that through that tragedy that Polanski suffered because of his parents dying in the Holocaust and what he went through and all of that stuff. So, and certainly Sharon Tate. And I mean, the guy, listen, whatever you want to say about Roman Polanski, and there is a lot, and I think what he did was awful, obviously. He's been through some fucking shit. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I want to get to this audio here. And obviously I'll stop it to kind of comment throughout, just because it's a movie I'm heavily invested in. It's a movie I love. I got the Paramount Presents 4K, luckily, even though I already had the Italian version, but that's just a little, like, I'm probably going to sell it at some point. But yeah, let's get my screen up so that we can take a listen.
The Fallen Robert Towne. Neil says, the literary screenplay.
Oh, yeah, and I should mention that, this is a Q&A, so we send in questions. It's kind of cool. This is actually how I was able to interact with Quentin Tarantino and asked him about his, stuff that he said about John Ford, which was just ridiculous. But it was cool because he actually answered. He actually, like, stood up to the criticism and was like, oh, okay, that's pretty sweet. So take a listen here.
What I mean is, getting a script sold has often been the hardest part about the movie business. But how about the idea of publishing screenplays as literature, because that is what they are, and producers picking writers to write actual movie scripts based on how successful they are in publishing screenplays? I believe this would make the getting in process less random, and writers can just be writers. And then in parentheses, he goes, note, this doesn't mean the literary screenplays are the movies that get made, but the writers that are successful at publishing them are the ones picked to write movie scripts for the purpose of making them.
Well, there was a moment, and I remember it from my childhood and teenage years, when sometimes there was a movie that was buzzed about enough that there was the published version of the script. Very rarely, though. I have to say that very rarely happens. I remember a couple of them, but I was never really interested in the screenplay as an art form, and I'm still not, and I don't believe it is. It is a blueprint for a much vaster world. And
okay, do we hear that, boys and girls? What is the screenplay? It's a blueprint.
It is not something that, everyone has their own definition of what a screenplay is. John Carpenter famously said it's a way to get money. A screenplay is a way to get money.
It's like a marketing or selling tool.
It's a selling tool, exactly. And
it's a selling tool. It's just it's not for marketing, but it's to market the art. It's a conversation between the artist and the executive, and being able to put into words, at least the the language they understand, as much as it's like, okay, well, they both speak English, so what's the fucking problem? No, but literally, this is how artists are able to sort of articulate, this is what this could be, this is what this could turn into, this is imagine this, and it's it's in this process. But that's what the screenplay has been largely, at least for the last 50 years. Now, maybe during the studio system in the 30s, 40s, 50s, it was different. There was a different process, and it was more workmanlike. But what we're talking about here is how can you get your movie made? And that's what it is. It's about, it's a financial process. Hey, why should we give you money? It's what it basically comes down to.
And then there are other screenwriters who take it a little differently. I'm Paul Schrader being a famous example of one, where he does see the script as the basis for the entire film. He's got it worked out in his mind. Now, I don't know if Schrader's ever published his scripts. I remember the first time I came across screenplays was in a Woody Allen book of screenplays. It was Annie Hall, it was Interiors, it was Manhattan, and I want to say Stardust Memories, though it could have just been the earlier three: Annie Hall, Interiors, Manhattan. And it was a revelation to me, because those screenplays, when I had seen those movies, I mean, he did tell actors they can go off script to a degree and deliver the lines the way they wanted to. I don't think Woody Allen ever gave line readings, but it was interesting to see in those scripts that every and and was in the dialogue. And those screenplays were a pleasure to read. Now, the original screenplay for Annie Hall was a movie called Anadonia. And it also, part of it was a murder mystery, and it was much, much, much longer than Annie Hall. And so that just goes to show you that how different movies change all the time. I mean, was it Hitchcock who famously said, movies are made 3 times. They're made once when you write it, they're remade when you shoot it, and they are remade again in the editing room.
And that gets into the conversation of, there's the screenplay that you write to get it, greenlit, but then there's the shooting script. There's the changes that need to be made after the fact. And, it's not the writer that necessarily is making these. It's it's finding that sort of common ground between, artistry and, finance through, the actual business being conducted. Finding that fiscal middle ground to make it, have it make a profit.
3 times you make a movie. This notion of the screenwriter, I don't know really where Neil is getting this idea that the screenwriter somehow has this power or this way of selling themselves so they can be chosen to write scripts. I think that era has been over for decades, I believe. I mean, it just doesn't really work that way. I think there are a number of fixed, quote unquote, A-list rewriters who are brought on to fix movies that need to get in shape to be shot. I think that Robert Towne, for example, I think when Tom Cruise asked him to write the first screenplay for Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma one, still I think the best one in the series, that what Towne understood was that, okay, there are a series of set pieces that everyone loves. How are we going to stitch together a script that ties these set pieces together? That was Robert Towne's job.
And look, I'm not really a huge fan of either of these people. I mean, I'm not a huge Woody Allen fan. I like some of his stuff. And Brian De Palma, I've had so many issues with Brian De Palma, and he's, of course, Bret Easton Ellis's favorite filmmaker, or at least one of his favorite filmmakers, or that period of time, late 70s throughout the 80s. But they've been around long enough where they have a reputation. They've proven it time and again that their movies make money, that people want to see their movies, and there's a return on their investment. So, whatever you can say about these, like them, dislike them, it's, they have a track record, and that matters in this business.
So, okay, he knew the whatever that thing where a Cruise comes down in the room on those ropes and he can't touch the floor, and then there's the opening where all of the people are killed. Then there is the train sequence and whatever. There were a bunch of things that Towne had to come up with the script. That's our old-fashioned notion of screenwriting plays no part at all in today's business. Zero. It just doesn't. It's who you know, and there is no like pitch meetings or studios usually have an idea that revolves around IP, and then they kind of figure out who's the guy who's going to follow the rules and make the script. Now, of course, when you look at a certain kind of movie that is not so dependent upon a studio, and that's not always totally indie, then there's a lot of freedom. But a lot of those scripts are written by the filmmaker, or they're adaptations of books that the filmmaker wants to shoot. I'm trying to think of what won the Oscars last year. I think Cord Jefferson, is that his name, for American Fiction? That was an adaptation of a Percival Everett novel, and Anatomy of a Murder, which is a French movie.
Yes, he called Anatomy of a Fall Anatomy of a Murder. I giggled a little bit when that happened. Yes, that's the kind of film nerd I am, where I'm just like, I don't know, and it's very childish, but it's just like smirk, giggle.
That was an original screenplay that this woman and her husband wrote during lockdown, and it works much differently in Europe than it does here. But I just don't know this notion that I'm going to break in and be a screenwriter. I'm going to break in and I'm going to sell my TV show, or if I do it the right way, it's going to all work out for me. It never works out that way for anybody, and it never has. Unless you are someone like Woody Allen, or I guess, I don't know, for a time, the Coen brothers. But again, these are auteurs, and these were also directors. If you're just talking about the idea of a famous screenwriter, the names from the 70s, are all forgotten now. I don't even know if anybody knows who Alvin Sargent is. He won 2 Oscars, and he wrote like tons of some of the most famous movies of that decade, but he was hired. Screenwriters were often hired. And Town, as we talked about, I think a couple podcasts back, was really a gun for hire. And as I did have dinner recently with Sam Wasson, who wrote that great book about Chinatown called The Big Goodbye.
Yeah, and I can't recommend the books of Sam Wasson anymore. The Big Goodbye on Chinatown, one of the best film books I've ever read. And then him and Janine Basinger, right, on the book Hollywood. Incredible, just an incredible book. It's a little soft on the commies in the blacklist in the 50s, to be fair, but it is a great rundown of the business from the silent film era, the 1920s, all the way to the present day. Phenomenal book, phenomenal author in Sam Watson. I'm currently reading the Coppola book, which I can't remember the name of, but if you know film books, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's sort of all about Coppola's, kind of his career. It jumps back and forth, between his ascending career in the 70s and, the Apocalypse Now fiasco and midlife crisis. So definitely check those out.
It really goes into detail about how this script, which is considered the second or third greatest script in the history of cinema, really was as much Polanski's script as it was Town's. And Polanski, if he'd gone to the Writers Guild of America and demanded credit, he probably would have gotten it, because of all the changes he made in cutting that script down and changing the ending. And the Sam,
remember, Robert Towne wanted a trilogy of films. He had this whole vision, so he wasn't going to end it with Evelyn getting shot through the eye. It just wasn't going to happen. But, you probably don't have a movie that's as great as what Chinatown ends up being. And this is why it's like Robert Towne gets viewed as this kind of special kind of talent. And it's like, yeah, he was good at what he did. But the idea that he was this passionate artist is like, it's a little, come on. This is why, like, screenwriters, yeah, there's a few, you know what I mean? There's a few examples of this, but it's a workman-like job. It's like the cliche of like the alcoholic screenwriter. You know what I mean? Like, it's on his last leg. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason it's a cliche. There's a reason it's a stereotype. So, and I'm not saying that's who Robert Towne was. He was a very successful screenwriter. He's very good at his job. But, you know, as Ellis says here, you know, he was a gun for hire. That's, I mean, like Steve Zahn, like, you know what I mean? Like the guy, like literally the guys that Scorsese works with to, you know, get The Irishman or Killers of the Flower Moon, you know, adapted. It's that kind of thing. It's like, you know, people, you know, Bill Monahan, the guy who did The Departed, who wrote the screenplay for The Departed. It's that kind of thing. So it's not Quentin Tarantino. It's not, and that's a bad example because that's like not really a great, you know, you know, he has fun and there's certainly a flair and a style to it, but it's not what I would call, you know, his movie. You know, as much fun as I have with Tarantino movies, I'll never be like, yeah, that was a really great film. You know what I mean? Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for sure, but yeah, it's so. And as we get back to this, I'll have to think of some examples of, you know, who would fit that, but yeah, I kind of looking at Robert Towne's career, very successful, very much in the conversation, but not somebody that I would exactly say was an impassioned artist. You know what I mean? So, but then again, that's why so many screenwriters wanted to direct, you know, to have that control.
Lawson said, without that ending, what do you have? It all leads up to that ending. And Robert Towne famously hated that ending.
Of course.
Didn't want that ending to happen. And without that ending, I don't know if we've been talking about Chinatown anyway. So who knows? I mean, and movies are cobbled together, even the great ones, you know, and so I don't know. My feeling always about a screenplay is never make the mistake F. Scott Fitzgerald made, which was, I'm going to write a script so good that they can't help but have to make it. Well, the business does not work that way. That just rarely, if ever, happens. So I look at a script as a story that probably someone else is going to tell, meaning the director. And so many people are going to interpret the actors. And who is going to shoot it? What is it going to look like? My job is to come up with an interesting scenario. And what are the scenes that mean a lot to me that will illuminate a world and illuminate a character? And it is a kind of reflection on where I'm at. And a lot of my best scripts were never made and will never be made. And then scripts of mine that could find financing were scripts that I tossed off in, you know, a month and weren't great. But somehow, you know, in this ridiculous business, they suddenly found backing. I mean, as much as I like my script for Relapse, it is a one-hander character study that was influenced by a lot of things. What was going on with my boyfriend at that time and what was going on with my sister at the time. The hopelessness of addiction. That's what I was thinking about. The hopelessness of addiction and not wanting to write an addiction movie, but wanting to fold that into a monster film. So, but I understand what Neil is asking, but at the same time, I don't know if that world exists or if it really ever existed. I just don't think the screenwriter has that much power. I think he just has no power. And it really is up to executives, it's up to directors, it's up to so many other, the business itself, finding the money. If you maybe change it around a little bit, we can get this actor. So it's a blueprint.
And see, this is the whole thing. And him talking about F. Scott Fitzgerald is perfect because that was sort of his vision, was like making something so grand and so opulent that you have to, it begs to be made, you know, kind of thing. It's like, it's better to work in this industry if you see it for what it is, if you see it for the house of cards it is. You know, the fact that anything ever gets made is kind of a miracle. No, and the fact that anything is good is kind of a miracle. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you just, and see, that's the thing. That's the real that's the real fuck you of the whole situation. It's, if you really care, it's like, don't go, you go anywhere else but Hollywood. You know what I mean? If you are, deeply cynical and you can see through things, and it's that's the thing though. It's like you are trying to passionately make something that you care about, right? But it's like you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for a fall, caring that much. You almost have to have some detachment while, you know what I mean? And I don't know if I could be that compartmentalized, to be able to like not care, to not be emotionally invested, knowing that you're probably going to get kicked in the face. It's probably not going to come together. It's probably not going to get sold. It's, and that hope or counting on that kind of coming through is just like, oh my God, you're literally just asking to get kicked in the balls. So, I mean, and metaphorically, but like, it's, you're hoping for something that most likely is never going to come to fruition, especially if it's anything creative, if it's anything that works outside of the sort of niches and nuances, even of modern filmmaking. Even if so it's like you'd have to make something so cookie cutter, as Don Draper says in Mad Men, derivative with a twist, different just enough that you can sell it. And that, that's really, that's what I have to say about all of that, is that it's kind of amazing that anything good gets made, because the deck is so stacked against it in terms of, especially now, Hollywood being so terrified of failure, so terrified of taking a risk, taking a chance.
A script is a blueprint, and if the movie turns out really, really well, then the writer will be, I mean, Tootsie is a terrific comedy, but that had, I don't know, 15 writers when they tried.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but Tootsie is not a great movie. It's not. It's an okay comedy.
To do arbitration
It's
on
like a
that
fucking
script.
Taylor Swift
There were
song.
like 2 giant boxes of scripts.
15 fucking screenwriters. I swear, if first of all, I don't know that that's true. I haven't looked it up, but if that's true, I'm pretty sure Rick's head would explode. The rule is like, if you have 4 or more screenwriters, your movie's not good, and that usually ends up being true.
From everyone from, I don't know, Elaine May to I don't know if Robert Towne ever was one of the 15 writers on that, but I guess the first writer got the credit. I think it was Larry Gelbart, who might have won the Oscar for that script. I don't know. Anyway,
I swear to God, these fucking names. Like, I don't even know names this obscure, Brett. Jesus Christ.
So, and I am, the idea of me writing a script for someone is unfathomable to me now. I don't think I would do it. I would only write a script that I would direct. Directing is the art form. The screenplay is not the art form, I don't believe. And I don't even.
And there it is. Right there. Just circle it with a big red pen. Directing is the art form. It always has been. It always will be. Okay, and it's not necessarily true that it always has been, but it's really hard to argue against this. And again, I'm biased. I'm whatever. I'm not a proponent of what is known as the auteur theory, but I do ultimately value auteur directors more than everybody else. Okay, because they take them. They're usually the producer on it, meaning they're going to make even more money if it does well. They're taking ownership over the thing. They're the screenwriter, they're the director, they're the producer usually, or one of them. And I'm sorry, like, if you're going to take that much ownership and that much responsibility, hey man, it's your world. I'm just living in it. So and those are the people that make the best movies. I almost keep slipping into the fact that, yes, most auteurs are men. Okay. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I don't know inherently if directing is a male oriented, kind of thing. I think that is silly, considering like there are good female directors, but I always have fun with film Twitter on that topic, by the way, where it's like, yeah, I know that. Like, I know that I believe in individualism. I believe in personal creativity and all that stuff. But, you know, it is a fun game to play where it's like, you know, you can have all of the women directors. I'll just keep all of the men. You know what I mean? Because it's no contest. That's why. And of course, there are historical reasons for that and industrial reasons. And, you know, Alice Guy Blaché in whatever, the late 1800s. And yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. And then I also like to troll film Twitter by telling them the greatest female filmmaker of all time is Leni Riefenstahl. So, you know, when are we watching Olympia and Triumph of the Will? You know, when are we going to put that on? So, but you know, it's whatever. I like to have fun with that. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't really care. But it does seem like, as we're getting off the topic of screenwriting here, it does seem like it's a male-driven occupation, you know, in terms of talent, in terms of skill, in terms of passion. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, even Jane Campion, you know, who made that stupid fucking Western movie, which I mean, really wasn't a Western because it was in Australia, but I can't even remember what it was called. So, you know, fuck me, right? But it won, I'm pretty sure, won Best Picture, or at least, no, that's right, she won Best Director. I think something else won Best Picture. But Power of the Dog, there we go. Just remembered it. So, but yeah, anyway, so I think, yeah, I would agree with Bret here that it's a director's medium. You know, that and the more control you have over it, the more you can influence the story you want to tell. But of course, then comes, you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't sell, people don't want it, you know, you're also the most responsible. You know, and Kevin Costner's kind of dealing with that right now with Horizon. So, I mean, it's a very interesting business, but it is a business at the end of the day. And I think people, especially on film Twitter, forget that, you know, and it's like, it's a piece of the puzzle. It is not the puzzle.
I even think someone like even David Mamet, I mean, whose book I just finished reading, Everywhere in Oink Oink, it's called. I know he talks about all the great scripts he wrote that directors asked him to write. So much of it was assignments. And he would do his best, and sometimes a director would read it and go, "This is a piece of shit. I'm not going to direct this movie." And he often felt that it was one of the best scripts he wrote. So you're basically writing for a director, and I mean, I think that's part of the reason why David Mamet became a director.
You know, in Neil's question here, he has this idea. He says, "How about the idea of publishing screenplays as literature, because that is what they are?"
I disagree.
Yeah,
yeah, they're not. Oh man, this one made me laugh quite a bit. I mean, this is a very misguided thing to say. It's like, look, you know, that's like saying the rough draft is art. You know, it's literally, it's like, come on, man, stop. Just, it's an outline. It's an idea for you know, it's basically an unfinished idea.
See, because it's not literature.
It is not literature at all. Literature is so different from a screenplay because literature is about consciousness. Literature is about consciousness and it's about style. Screenplays are not about that at all. They are not about consciousness. They're not about style. They are about story and structure. They're about story and structure. That's all that. And you have a limited amount of time, 100 to 120 pages to tell this particular story with these particular characters, and what's the most interesting way to proceed with the 22 or 23 scenes that is going to illuminate this world. That is not a novel. That is not literature at all. That is constructing something. That is about structuring something, and also being very careful to take into account what is affordable. You don't have to do that with a novel. I never worry that there's a scene with 200 people at a party and it starts raining and it's midnight. I never worry about that in a book. I would never write it in a script because I knew it would be incredibly expensive to make. So, you know, you have all of these concerns also about the realistic limitations of what a screenplay can be. So, you know,
And that's the other thing too, is like we're talking about if money really isn't an object. I mean, there's so many, like if you're working with a micro budget, if you're on an indie budget, there's so many considerations you have to take with the script. And okay, we got to cut that. We got to cut that. That we don't have time to do that. That's too expensive. That, you know what I mean? It's not, there's all sorts of practical things, and that's where it's just like it gets very real very quickly, and you fundamentally understand. It's like, okay, these are our resources. This is what we can do, and it just becomes very different than being on a studio backlot.
so they are absolutely not literature for me. I find reading screenplays now excruciating. I will not read a screenplay. Do not send me your fucking screenplay.
But I got right.
Josh Olson wrote a very funny piece about, no, I will not read your fucking screenplay, and gave very good reasons why. They're hell to read. If you've been reading the great writers and you have to, the screenplay is for the actor, it's for the director, it's for the person who's going to budget the movie out, it's for the financiers. But to read, I can't even read on my own after a while. It's so sort of, it's like creating a blueprint for someone to follow.
I also think it's a map to the bank that you're hoping works
basically
out.
Is a map to the bank,
Yeah,
and you are also hoping to please others. I don't feel I have to worry about that when I'm writing a book. I don't feel I have to please anybody but myself. I don't feel that way about a screenplay. And even the ones that I'm closest to, there's one called The Golden Suicides, which I've mentioned many times on this. Best script I've written, probably will never be made.
And yeah, it's sort of a Scientology paranoia thriller. Gus Van Sant was attached to direct it. It's kind of a shame it didn't get made, because I thought it would have made a pretty good movie. But yeah, there's a Vanity Fair article about it. I believe it's Jeremy something and Teresa Duncan. I don't know, but they're two artists who just became incredibly paranoid and convinced that they had these stalkers after them.
Even that script, I don't see as a work of art that needs to be read just to have fun, just to read it. I don't know. But maybe there are people who love writing scripts and giving screenwriters notes and stuff. I have never been that person, and I've always seen screenwriting as a way to leap into directing. But I also, part of the problem why I haven't been more ambitious in really chasing it, and I never really was ambitious enough. I guess because I grew up out here. I don't know. I knew what the odds were. And after a while, there just gets to be a point when the pointlessness of it all begins to overwhelm you. And it's like, I'm out of here.
And, if screenplays were literature, then our friend Quentin, he wouldn't have to stop making movies to keep getting his rocks off, right? He doesn't want to make maps after 10. So he says he wants to make literature.
Right. And Quentin Tarantino has the power to write the scripts he wants to write and then shoot them. But I also don't. I have tried reading some of Quentin's scripts and maybe gotten further than other, further than other directors, screenwriters. But still, I'd rather watch the movies.
Right.
The movies. I don't want to read the script. The script to me is, as you say, a map to the bank. It's something to.
I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's letting the studio, production company, whoever's writing the check, basically, hey, I know what the fuck I'm doing. But it's you're selling yourself. You're selling the movie, the idea. It is almost just like, if you guys have seen Mad Men, right? It's the same fucking thing. You're convincing somebody that your idea is worth investing in. That, hey, if you don't buy this, somebody else is going to, and you're going to be sorry, and you're going to remember this conversation. That's what it's about. It's a business transaction. That's what the screenplay is. Now, again, he talked about Paul Schrader, sees it in this other way, and again, Paul Schrader is, he's one of one. He is a unique individual, just like John Milius was, and still is. He's just not making movies anymore. You know what I mean? You have these but again, Paul Schrader was a director. Yes, he was a screenwriter, but he was a director as well. He directed his own movies. And, the screenplays that he was responsible for are, I mean, the reason he's known as a screenwriter is because of the movies that he's written. He wrote the screenplay for Taxi Driver, which changed. When Scorsese got it and then, they were shooting, it changed, quite a few details. He wrote the screenplay for The Last Temptation of Christ, also directed by Scorsese, and Bringing Out the Dead, the excellent Nicolas Cage film directed by Martin Scorsese. And so, he Raging Bull screenplay written by Paul Schrader, one of the greatest films of all time. It's a shame because it's like he really does know that specific character, God's Lonely Man, Travis Bickle, Jake LaMotta, I suppose Jesus Christ. And then you have Willem Dafoe's character in Light Sleeper. You have James Coburn, or not James Coburn, excuse me, Nick Nolte's character in Affliction. You've got Ernst Toller, played by Ethan Hawke, in First Reformed. You've got Oscar Isaac's character in Card Counter. You have I always forget these guys' names. It's not Joel Kinnaman. It's the guy I always confuse for Joel Kinnaman. And I have no idea why, but I think it's Master Gardener. Fantastic, just absolutely fantastic film, by the way. He zeroes in on that character so well, and he knows him because he is him, by the way. So well. And but that's, you know what I mean? That's an artistic exercise that has been done over and over and over again, where those movies don't necessarily make a lot of money, but he can get enough investors to be interested. But again, that's a more of an artistic pursuit than what we're talking about here with the Hollywood system, trying to create a derivative with a twist, trying to create something that is familiar, that has a formula, but that is just different enough, just different enough to be able to sell it. So and again, Schrader is a writer director, so I think that he belongs in that category of auteur filmmakers anyway. But yeah, he used to write scripts for a lot of people, and in a way he was like Robert Towne, but unlike Robert Towne, Schrader has that unresolved angst that he can't really seem to get rid of, even if it's become more mature over time, even if he's sort of gotten less reactive in his characters, even though, I guess Ernst Toller's not, pretty extreme. So, I think that this overview is really good. I think that Ellis knows what he's talking about. But the thing is, the screenplay is so malleable. It can be changed at any stage, really. And sure, you can think of it as a fuck you and a personal betrayal and all these things, but the business, this is what the business is. And it's why you see things like 3 or 4 screenwriters on the same movie. I mean, that's not as egregious as like the number of movies to me that need reshoots or something. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you're just bleeding money. How did you not get this right? You know what I mean? That's literally the producer's job, is to know the shooting schedules, the dates. And I guess like when you're paying people $20 million a movie and who have all kinds of schedules and places they need to be, it's sort of, an afterthought. But anyway, I just hate, IP movies as it is. So like, let's finish up here. He's got a few more things to say here on screenwriting.
Attract actors, and film is not an oral experience. It's a visual one. And the author of the movie is the director, period. It's not the screenwriter.
You know what I think of when reading screenplays? I subscribed. I wonder if you did. When I was in high school in the late 90s, I was a little movie dork, and I subscribed to, I believe it was called Screenwriting Magazine. It was some magazine that you would get once a month, I believe, and it was just, they'd have these big pieces and they'd have excerpts from the scripts. So as a kid, I had never been exposed to like what it looked like.
Adam, it wasn't excerpts from the scripts. It was excerpts from the movie script that was shot and edited and shown in theater.
The shooting script, the script that they're following on set.
The shooting script.
Yeah.
The shooting script. That's what you're reading, because the ending to American Beauty is not the ending.
That movie was totally, I've read the shooting script.
That was completely redone. The ending of that.
The beginning?
Is so,
Yeah, if you guys ever get a chance to find out what the original American Beauty was, it's insane. It's Alan Ball kind of went a little overboard, but I really like where they ended the movie, and we'll talk about that actually here in a little bit with Kevin Spacey. But you never know. You never know what a movie is going to turn into, and how different it was from what was originally concocted, and so much of this business is about ego, and it's like it's really helpful if you know going in that most likely they're going to fuck with your scripts. If you're still working as in that kind of role, you're contracted to write something like that. It's like, good luck, because it's such a uncreative exercise, and I suppose it serves some kind of creative purpose, but it takes a special kind of like head on the shoulders to get that job done and be good at it, I think.
Yes, Alan Ball might have won the Oscar for that, but that was kind of remade in the editing room. Sure, he had come up with the characters, and sure, there was a situation there, but in terms of the feeling of that movie and how it ended up being, let's say, a quote unquote happier ending than the more downbeat nihilistic ending that he originally envisioned. This is the problem.
Yes, the original ending is darker than what they ended up going with. So just keep that in mind.
Great movies don't necessarily come from a perfectly executed screenplay. The screenplay is malleable. You can do a lot of things with the screenplay while you're shooting it. There can be scenes that aren't working for actors, and they then have to. This is why Robert Towne made so much money rewriting scripts, and David Mamet talks about. I don't know if that still exists now, if there is a real hunger for someone like Carrie Fisher, who was like the go-to to rewrite comedies and rom-coms and stuff. I don't think we're in that kind of movie world anymore, where, the screenplay is considered important enough to lavish so much expense on, and I'm thinking of the movies that I've liked the most, for example, last year. And I don't know, is Poor Things was it really all about just the screenplay? No, because that had some bum scenes in it. And there were also problems with casting, for example. I have to say, though, that the screenplay for Challengers is one of the better screenplays.
Okay, and that's where we're going to cut that off. So, very smart man, but he's got some blind spots, which is fine. We all do. We all have those big old blind spots. So, no, I think it's an interesting conversation to have about movies, why they work, what's inherently there. It's not necessarily the screenplay, especially when it comes to a dynamic filmmaker who knows what they're doing. It's and so much of the time the movie's made in the editing room. Sometimes you have those talented guys who can keep the whole movie in their head, and it's basically a storyboard in there. But yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, because it's like we all have our perceptions about why a movie works, what's there, but really it's all of those sort of different parts coming together. And before someone clips that to embarrass me over the things I've said in the past, like, the director is what matters, and everything goes through the direct. I mean, I believe that. I think that is inherently true. It's like, movie are medium. They are collaborative art form. I absolutely believe that. I know that to be true because, of course, the director can't do everything. That's not how movies work anyway. But everybody can have their input. Everybody can say what they want. Everybody can express themselves and their concerns and their vision for the successful completion of a film being produced. But ultimately, the final say comes down to the director for creative, financial, whatever reason. The director has the final say. And so, yeah, we can, let's celebrate the great movies made and give them awards and value the crew members and all of that stuff. That's great. But you serve at the pleasure of that man or woman who is the head of the production, who is running the production, and we get into this. Articles will come out and say, well, I didn't like how it was treated or talked to or blah, blah, blah. And it's just looking for sympathy. You're looking for some kind of blowback on, because you didn't feel like you got the opportunities you should have, or whatever, whatever sour grapes it might be. But it's like, at the end of the day, you're working as a piece of this larger thing. And I realize that this movies and football both kind of reveal, I don't know, they kind of reveal the hypocritical nature of being an individualist, because both things are sort of collective efforts. And it's like, yes, but it's with the same idea, the same vision, all looking, downfield or on the set to what's going to be made that day, but and trying to connect sports and film production is kind of difficult, but that's just kind of how I see it. It's, we're all on the same page. We're all working towards this goal. We're all working together to accomplish something. But largely there's one man who calls the shots, and he can, again, you can collaborate and come together and discuss. But again, ultimately it comes down to that artist, and a director is more than an artist. They're also again, running the production of the film. So a lot of responsibilities, a lot going on. And creatively, it's why I value those artists the most. My favorite director of all time is Stanley Kubrick, and borderline creative genius, but he was able to get the most out of the people he worked with. So, moving on now, I wanted to cover I'm going to just cover a couple clips here because I don't want to go over the whole interview with Kevin Spacey and Lex Friedman, but there were a few stories that I really wanted to kind of get into here. First is on American Beauty, which is a movie that I love personally, and I understand, not everybody does, but that's okay.
Sam Mendes had never directed a film before American Beauty. And so what he did was he took the best elements of theater and applied them to the process. So we rehearsed it like a play in a soundstage where everything was laid out like it would be in a play, and this couch will be here. And
Uh-oh.
he'd sent me a couple of tapes. He'd sent me two cassette tapes, one that he'd like to call pre-Lester, before he begins to move in a new direction, and then post-Lester. And they just were different songs. And then he said to me one day, and I always thought this was brilliant of Sam to use Lemon, knowing what Lemon meant to me. He said, when was the last time you watched The Apartment? And I said, I don't know.
Jack Lemmon, by the way.
Yeah. I love that movie so much. He goes, I want you to watch it again, and then let's talk. So I went and I watched the movie again. And we sat down, and Sam said, What Lemon does in that film is incredible, because there is never a moment in the movie where we see him change. He just evolves. And he becomes the man he becomes because of the experiences that he has through the course of the film. But there's this remarkable consistency in who he becomes. And that's what I need you to do as Lester. I don't want the audience to ever see him change. I want him to evolve. And so we did some, I mean, first of all, it was just a great direction. And then second of all, we did some things that people don't know we did to aid that gradual shift of that man's character. First of all, I had to be in the best shape from the beginning of the movie because we didn't shoot it in sequence. So I was in this crazy shape. I had this wonderful trainer named Mike Torsha, who just was incredible. But so what we did was, in order to then show this gradual shift, was I had 3 different hair pieces. I had 3 different kinds of costumes of different colors and sizes. And I had different makeup. So in the beginning, I was wearing a kind of drab, dull, slightly, uninspired hairpiece. And my makeup was kind of gray and boring. And I was there were times when I was like too much like this. And Sam would go, Kevin, you look like Walter Matthau. Would you please stand up a little bit? We're sort of midway through at this point. And then at a certain point, the wig changed and it had little highlights in it, a little more color, a little more, the makeup became a little, the suit was a little tighter. And then finally, a third wig that was golden highlights and sunshine and rosy cheeks and tight fit. And these are what we call theatrical tricks. This is how an audience doesn't even know it's happening, but it is this gradual. And I just always felt that was such a brilliant way, because he knew what I felt about Jack. And when you watch The Apartment, it is extraordinary that he doesn't ever change. He just, so I'm.
The joke there is that Jack Lemmon never changed because he was always an annoying pain in the ass in every movie he was in. But to be fair, Jack Lemmon is sort of Kevin Spacey's hero, mentor, was like a father to him. And certainly if you know about Spacey's own father, it's, it's just like it's just, there's a special connection there. So that's I understand, and I'm not trying to make fun of him too much, but that's I just grow very tired of Jack Lemmon very quickly. He was very good in Glengarry Glen Ross. There's a few performances, he's a very good performer. I just personally kind of found him to be this neurotic, nebbish, terribly annoying performer. But that, again, different era. It's fine. I'm definitely more of a Walter Matthau fan. Charlie Varick, one of my favorite 70s exploitation crime films.
And in fact, I thanked Jack when I won the Oscar. And I did my thank you speech and I walked off stage, and I remember I had to sit down for a moment because I didn't want to go to the press room because I wanted to see if Sam was going to win. And so I was waiting, and my phone rang, and it was Lemon. He said, "You're a son of a bitch." I said, "What?" He goes, "First of all, congratulations and thanks for thanking me, because, God knows you couldn't have done it without me." He said, "Second of all," he said, "you know how long it took me to win from supporting actor? I won it for Mr. Roberts, and it took me like 10, 12 years to win Oscar. You did it in 4, you son of a bitch."
Yeah.
Yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor in 1996 for The Usual Suspects, and then he won in 2000 for American Beauty. So, Best Actor.
The Apartment was, I mean, it's widely considered one of the greatest movies ever.
Oh, and for the record, I hate The Apartment. I think it's sentimental trash. But, 1960, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I just never really got it. I was like, oh, you're sad that women are taken advantage of in power centers? Don't work there. No, it's fine. It's just, it's the view I have of it now where it's like, and look, at the time, you could argue there weren't a lot of opportunities for women that offices were kind of where it is, and New York is a big city, etc. So I mean, again, I can be fair-minded when I have to be, but yeah, I just kind of found the characters to be simple, and it's like, okay, is your entire message here be nice, Billy Wilder? Like, really? The man who made Sunset Boulevard and Double Indemnity? That's your okay. What an asshole. No. And I mean, Witness for the Prosecution, great movie. But again, The Apartment it's fine. A lot of people like it. It's beloved. I am not one of those people.
People sometimes refer to it as a comedy, which is an interesting kind of classification. I suppose that's a lesson about comedy, that the best comedy is the one that's basically a tragedy.
Well, I mean, look, some people think Clockwork Orange is a comedy. And I'm not saying there aren't some good laughs in Clockwork Orange, but
it's a satire. It's not really a comedy, though.
I mean, yeah. What's that line between comedy and tragedy for you?
Well, if it's a line I cross all the time, because I've tried always to find the humor, unexpected sometimes, maybe inappropriate sometimes, maybe shocking.
And just really want to go over this real quick. Comedy is supposed to be inappropriate. That's why it's comedy. That's the whole function of it. It's about being inappropriate. That the observations, the jokes, the perspectives, etc. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about being inappropriate. Manners. Doing and saying what you are not supposed to do and say. That's why as an idea and as an execution, it is deeply a titillating thing. It's like you are breaking the rules. You're breaking protocol. You're breaking the social contract that we all have with one another. That's why it's so fascinating. That's why it's so alluring. But that and that's the whole point. The whole point is to enjoy something that ultimately it's like a thought. It's a series of thoughts, or it doesn't hurt anybody. It's it's execution of poking our funny bone. So I think about this all the time when it comes to stand-up comedy, to improv, to sketch comedy. It's just like we have lost our ability to laugh at each other and laugh at ourselves. We've taken everything way too seriously.
But I've tried in, I think, almost every dramatic role I've had to have a sense of humor and to be able to bring that along with everything else that is serious. Because frankly, that's how we deal with stuff in life,
I think Sam Mendes actually said in the Now documentary something like, with great theater, with great stories, you find humor on the journey to the heart of darkness. Something like this. Very poetic.
Yeah.
Stood out to me.
Yeah,
but it's true.
I'm sorry, I can't be that poetic. I'm very sorry.
But it's true. I mean, the people I've interacted in this world have been to a war zone, and the ones who have lost the most and have suffered the most are usually the ones who are able to make jokes the quickest. And the jokes are often dark and absurd and cross every single line. No political correctness, all of that.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's like the great Mary Tyler Moore show where they can't stop giggling at the clown's funeral. I mean, it's just one of the great episodes ever. giggling at a funeral is as bad as farting at a funeral.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's some people who've done both.
Oh man. So you mentioned American Beauty and the idea of not changing but evolving. That's really interesting because that movie is about like finding yourself. It's a philosophically profound movie. It's about various characters in their own ways finding their own identity in a world where maybe a system, a materialistic system that wants you to be like everyone else. And so, I mean, Lester is really transforms himself throughout the movie. And you're saying the challenge there is to still be the same human being fundamentally.
Yeah, and I also think that the film was powerful because you had three very honest and genuine portrayal of young people. And then you had Lester behaving like a young person, doing things that were unexpected. And I think that the honesty with which it dealt with those issues that those teenagers were going through, and the honesty with which it dealt with what Lester was going through, I think are some of the reasons why the film had the response that it did from so many people. I mean, I used to get stopped, and someone would say to me, when I first saw American Beauty, I was married. And the second time I saw it, I wasn't. And I was like, well, we weren't trying to increase the divorce rate. That wasn't our intention. But it is interesting how so many people have those kinds of crazy fantasies. And what I admired so much about who Lester was as a person, why I wanted to play him, is because in the end, he makes the right decision.
In the end, he makes the right decision. And that's kind of the whole thing, isn't it? That's the whole thing. I am so sick and tired. I am so sick of reading people who reading people's take on American Beauty. It's so misguided. It's so out in left field. It's like, okay, yes, a man realized that his fantasy didn't match up to reality, and he understood that he couldn't go through with what he had planned to do. And that's consciousness, that's morality, that's understanding, that's, you know, coming to grips with who you are as a person. I don't really see the problem. You know what I mean? Like you can think it's icky. It is in reality that it is, but it also depicts what you know what his vision is of it, and it's very, um, it's very one-sided. It's not. It's very inconsiderate. It's very selfish. It's very. But that's what fantasies are. That's what you know what I mean. That's how Well, I hope this doesn't keep happening. It's- oh, okay. Bear with me just a second here. Let me see if I can get. Okay, so we're gonna try this now. We'll try to get back here to American Beauty.
In a marriage, they're on, and to see somebody living that life and then saying "fuck it" in every way possible, and not just in a cynical way, but in a way that opens Lester up to see the beauty in the world. That's, the beauty in American Beauty. It's
Well, and you may have
And I mean, really, it's really it's an empowering thing, because it's like this is a soul-sucking career job where, you know, there's corruption, there's people taking advantage, there's people who are going to lose their job because an executive, let a hooker borrow his credit card for 3 months at the local hotel. Um, it's bullshit, and something that eh, kind of could have been, that was felt in America, certainly towards the end of the 90s. And, he literally writes that review of what his job is, to try to save it. And it's basically telling him, it's like, I retire to the men's room no less than 5 times a day or 3 times a day, and jerk off while fantasizing about a life that doesn't so closely resemble hell. It's just like, and I've always wanted to write something like that in a resignation letter or whatever, but just basically telling my employer to go fuck themselves. Like, he's such a hero for doing that. And I mean, granted, he blackmails his company out of $60,000 and doesn't have any career prospects, but it's just a great moment of a refusal to accept bullshit. So it's one of my favorite aspects of American Beauty.
to blackmail your boss to get there, but
and in that there's a bunch of humor also, in the anger and in the absurdity of sort of taking a stand against the conformity of life. There's this humor, and I read somewhere that the dinner scene, which is kind of play-like, where Lester slams the plate against the
Asparagus.
wall, was improvised by you. The slamming of the
Asparagus.
plate against the wall.
no,
No,
absolutely.
The internet lies once again.
Absolutely written and directed. Yeah, can't take credit for that.
The plate. Okay. Well, that was a genius interaction there. There's something about the dinner table and losing your shit at the dinner table, having a fight and losing your shit at the dinner table. Where else? Like,
I don't know. It's very like it. I mean, I know that this thing never happened on Leave It to Beaver, but it kind of reminds me of that, like cookie cutter 1950s Americana, and just like breaking a plate against the wall and seeing the asparagus and the lemon slowly slide down.
Yellowstone was another situation where it's a family at the dinner table, and then one of them says, "Fucking,"
And hey, look, it's Wes Bentley, who was also in American Beauty.
"I'm not eating this anymore, and I'm going to create a scene."
Right.
It's a beautiful kind of environment for dramatic scenes.
Or Nicholson in The Shining. I mean, there's some family scenes gone awry in that movie.
The contrast between you and Annette Bening in that scene creates the genius of that scene. So how much of acting is the dance between two actors?
Well, with Annette, I just adored working with her. And we were the two actors that Sam wanted from the very beginning, much against the will of the higher ups who wanted other actors to play those roles. But I've known Annette since we did a screen test together for Milos Forman for a film he did of the Les Liaisons Dangereuses movie. It was a different film from that one, but it was the same story. And
Dangerous Liaisons?
I've always thought she is just remarkable. And I think that the work she did in that film, the relationship that we were able to build, for me, the saddest part of that success was that she didn't win the Oscar. And I felt she should have.
What kind of interesting direction did you get from Sam Mendes? How you approach playing different, and how to take on the different scenes. There's a lot of just brilliant scenes in that movie.
Well, I'll share with you a story that most people don't know, which is our first 2 days of shooting were in Smiley's, the place where I get a job, and a fast food place.
Yeah, it's a burger joint.
Yeah. And I guess it was like maybe the third day or the fourth day of shooting. We'd now done that. And I said to Sam, so how are the dailies? You know, how do they look? He goes, which ones? I said, well, the first Smiley's. He goes, oh, they're shit. And I
Imagine being a first-time director and telling Kevin Spacey that his first work on American Beauty was shit. A role that he would go on to win Best Actor for.
I went, yeah. No, how were they? He goes, no, they're shit. I hate them. I hate everything about them. I hate the costumes. I hate the location. I hate that you're inside. I hate the way you acted. I hate everything but the script. So I've gone back to the studio and asked them if we can reshoot the first 2 days. And it was like, Sam, this is your very first movie. You're going back to Steven Spielberg and saying, I need to reshoot the first 2 days entirely? And he went, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And that's exactly what we did. A couple of weeks later, they decided that it was now a drive-through, because Annette and Peter Gallagher used to come into the place and ordered from the counter. Now, Sam had decided it has to be a drive-through. You have to be in the window of the drive-through, change the costumes, and we reshot those first 2 days. And Sam said it was actually a moment of incredible confidence, because he said the worst thing that could possibly have happened in my first 2 days. And after that, I was like, I know what I'm doing, and I knew I had to reshoot it, and it was absolutely right.
Mhm.
And I guess that's what a great director must do, is have the guts in that moment to reshoot everything. I mean, that's a pretty gutsy move.
2 other little things to share with you about Sam, about the way he is. You wouldn't know it, but the original script opened and closed with a trial. Ricky was accused of Lester's murder, and the movie was bookended by this trial.
It's a very different movie.
Which they shot the entire trial for weeks. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And I used to fly in my dreams. You know, those opening shots over the neighborhood? I used to come into those shots in my bathrobe, flying. And then when I hit the ground and the newspaper was thrown at me by the newspaper guy and I caught it, the alarm would go off and I wake up in bed. I spent 5 days being hung by wires and filming these sequences of flying through my dreams. And Sam said to me, yeah, the flying sequences are all gone and the trial is gone. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And here's my other little favorite story about Sam, and that when we were shooting in the Valley, one of those places I flew, this was an indoor set. Sam said to me in the morning, "Hey, at lunch, I just want to record a guide track of all the dialogue, all of your narration, because they just needed an editing as a guide." And I said, "Sure." So I remember we came outside of this, in this hallway where I had a dressing room in this little studio we were in. And Sam had like a cassette tape recorder and like a little microphone. And we put it on the floor and he pushed record. And I read the entire narration. And I never did it again. That's the narration in the movie. Because Sam said when he listened to it, I wasn't trying to do anything. He said, "You had no idea where these things were going, where they were going to be placed, what they were going to mean. You just read it so innocently, so purely, so directly that I brought to the studio and headphones on, and had you do it again, it would change the ease with which you'd done it." And so they just fixed all of the problems that they had with this little cassette. And that is the way I did it. And the only time I did it was in this little hallway.
And once again, a great performance lies in being doing less.
Yeah. Yeah.
The innocence and the purity of less.
He knew I would have come into the studio and fucked it up.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the notion of beauty that permeates American Beauty? What do you think that theme is, with the roses, with the rose petals, the characters that are living this mundane existence slowly opening their eyes up to what is beautiful in life?
See, it's funny. I don't think of the roses, and I don't think of her body in the poster, and I don't think of those things as the beauty. I think of the bag. I think that there are things we miss that are right in front of us that are truly beautiful.
The little things, the simple things.
Yeah, and in fact, I'll even tell you something that I always thought was so incredible.
For the record, the bag thing doesn't work. It's the thing that doesn't work most about American Beauty. It's just, and I know what Alan Ball and Sam Mendes they're trying to communicate there, and I do think it's something personal and vulnerable and tough. But when you don't get it right, eesh, it's just it just lays there, and you're kind of just waiting for it to get off the screen. So I don't know, it's teenagers, so whatever. It's a little flowery and sentimental and whatever, but it does tie in somewhat with the ending monologue that Spacey gives. So I can't completely criticize it, but yeah, doesn't really work in my opinion. It's really the only thing, or one of the only things, that I take points off for when it comes to the overall score on the movie. But and a lot of people have problems with the fact that it won Best Picture in 1999, one of the great years, I mean truly great years in movie making. And it could have gone to half a dozen movies, in all honesty, that were top that year. The Insider, Magnolia. I'm gonna completely forget the year now because I'm an idiot. But and I mean, there were other movies that I really love, like Fight Club, that was never gonna win Best Picture, or Office Space, or Any Given Sunday, or The Matrix is a really good movie that came out that year. At least was relatively inventive. But yeah, 1999 was just a insanely loaded year. And highly competitive. So it's like, I'm look, all things considered, I'm perfectly fine with American Beauty coming out on top.
When we shot the scenes in the office where Lester worked, the job he hated, there was a bulletin board behind me on a wall. And someone who was watching a cut or early dailies, who was in the marketing department, saw that someone had cut out a little piece of paper and stuck it, and it said, "Look closer." And they presented that to Sam as the idea of what that could go on the poster. The idea of looking closer was such a brilliant idea, but it wasn't in the script. It was just on a wall behind me, and someone happened to zoom in on it and see it and thought, that's what this movie's about. This movie's about taking the time to look closer. And I think that in itself is just beautiful.
Mortality also permeates the film. It starts with acknowledging that death is on the way, that Lester's time is finite. You ever think about your own death?
Yeah.
Scared of it?
When I was at my lowest point, yes, it scared me.
What does that fear look like? What's the nature of the fear? What are you afraid of?
That there's no way out.
Join the club, buddy. Join the club.
There's no answer.
That there's no answer.
Yep. That nothing makes sense.
That nothing makes sense.
See, the interesting thing about Lester is facing the same fear. He seemed to be somehow liberated and accepted everything.
Yeah.
And then saw the beauty of it.
Because he got there. He was given the opportunity to reinvent himself and to try things he'd never tried, to ask questions he'd never asked, to trust his instincts and to become the best version of himself he could become. And so Dick Van Dyke, who has become an extraordinary friend of mine, Dick is 98 years old. And he says, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. When I spend time with him, I'm just moved by every day, He gets up and he goes, "It's a good day. I woke up." And I learn a lot about, I have a different feeling about death now than I did 7 years ago. And I'm on the path to being able to be in a place where I've resolved the things I needed to resolve, and won't probably get to all of it in my lifetime, but I certainly would like to be at a place where if I were to drop dead tomorrow, it would have been an amazing life.
So Lester got there. It sounds like Dick Van Dyke got there. You're trying to get there.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't even I don't even think they get there emotionally with the character, with the movie, especially kind of reading their takeaway or what they think of the movie, but it's so human. It's such a flawed human being with a lovely tapestry of depth and breadth and character details, and just someone who got it and then who had it taken away from him, because that is exactly how life is. It's you get it, it's like you fought really hard and then just the fucking trapdoor falls from under your feet. Yep. So it's illuminating. It's one of those things. And again, just kind of listening to this interview, listening to his own words. And I say this all the time with actors, yet they are professional liars, but just hearing what the character means to him. That alone, um, felt substantial, felt real. And I certainly hope Kevin Spacey comes back and gets back on his feet. I know he took a big hit, and he's pretty much faced every accusation. There's been little to no proof that anything untoward happened, and I'm pretty much ready to move on. But let's go to our second Spacey video here. I've been going for an hour and a half already, so I'm probably just gonna charge ahead and get everything covered tonight. This is going to be a shorter video, and then there are 2 articles I want to go over, one with Vince Vaughn and the other with James Cameron. So let's go ahead and get this set up. I don't expect everybody to stay for the whole episode, so I appreciate you guys sticking around if you have. This is just a funny story that made my eyes go big when I heard it a couple weeks ago.
He also said, interesting line, that improvisation helps you learn about the character. Can you explain that? So, like, through maybe playing with the different ways of saying the words, or the different ways to bring the words to life, you get to learn about yourself, about the character you're playing.
It can be helpful. But improv is, I'm such a big believer in the writing, and in serving the writing and doing the words the writer wrote.
Do you hear that, actors? Do you hear that? Have some fucking respect.
Improv for me, unless you're just doing like comedy, and I love improv, and in comedy it's brilliant. So much fun to watch people just come up with something right there. But that's where you're looking for laughs, and you're specifically in a little scene that's being created. But I think improv has had value. But I have not experienced it as much in doing plays as I have sometimes in doing film, where you'll start off rehearsing, and a director may say, let's just go off book and see what happens. And I've had moments in film where someone went off book, and it was terrifying. There was a scene I had in Glengarry Glen Ross where the character I play has fucked something up. It's just screwed something up. And Pacino. And so we had this scene where Al is walking like this, and the camera is moving with him, and he is shooing.
And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly the scene he's talking about. It's when he lets it out that he didn't know the play between Jonathan Pryce and Al Pacino's character, and he absolutely fucking blows the sale. And this
Me
is
a new asshole. And in the middle of the take, Al starts talking about me. Oh, Kevin, you don't think we know how you got this job? You don't think we know whose dick you've been sucking on to get this part in this movie? And I'm literally like, I don't know what the hell is happening. We got to the end of that take. Al walked up to me and he went, oh, that was so good. Oh my God, that was so good. Just so you know, the sound, I asked them not to record. So you have no dialogue. So it's just me. Oh, that was so good. You look like a car wreck.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And it was actually.
And you got to understand, this is when Spacey was just getting some traction. He was just getting into his career, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Trying to be a leading man, in the 90s, and being out was just not. Nope. And this is why it's like, it never gets talked about. Okay. It doesn't ever get talked about. Maybe sometimes, occasionally, but there's a lot of leading men out there who are gay. And by a lot, maybe that's not fair, but there's enough where it's like, if you knew, or if the public knew, it would be over. And I know that sounds crazy that anyone would care, but it, like, I have my suspicions about a few people, and it's like, I don't care. I really don't care, because again, it's about the performance, it's about what you bring to the table, but there's a financial component to not being transparent, so to speak. So it's, it's not great. That, I mean, Hollywood is a facade. It's a joke. It's a mirage. I mean, really, it's made of bullshit. It's just made of perpetual fucking bullshit. And that's, look, you can accuse me of being bitter or angry or whatever, or I'm projecting. No, those are just facts. That's the starting point. I love movies. I love learning about how they're made. I love the industry as a creative, thing. But it is a power center, and it's about, at its center, as much as I do not like to admit it or talk about it, the film industry at its core is about exploitation. Now, you could argue everybody should have their eyes open, and everybody's an adult and all those things, and all of that is true. All of that is 100% true. But it does not change the fact that an entire industry for almost 100 years has gotten by on that very reality. Now, it's its own, it's its own world, and people navigate it in all sort of ways. But the way they sort of project about politics and caring about Me Too and all this fucking bullshit is a mirage. It is it's a corporate town. Them pretending like they're all about liberal ideology and shit. It's all a fucking smokescreen. These are powerful, entitled, rich people who like to be thought well of, PR wise, but they don't give a fuck. Who knows what they do behind closed doors? They're weirdos. That's what you should take away from all this. These people are fucking weirdos. Talented, they're weirdos. So it's, it's a shame that this still goes on, that you have to hide who you are. But it is a business, and it is about image, and it is about all of these things that really you can't control. And this gets talked about quite often, where it's like you feel like an imposter when you become famous, because you see your image everywhere. You see yourself at the red carpet premiere. You see all these things, and it's like, that's not you. That's the that's the that's the replication of your image, and it's like this weird, it's like that Aboriginal thing about, like, you lose your soul, get your picture taken. But no, it's that very same concept. And I at least understand that. I'm a little bit sympathetic to that, I guess. But at the end of the day, you can just walk away when you're done with it. So,
An incredibly generous thing that he gave me so that I would react.
Oh, wow. Did they use that shot? Because
That's
you
the
weren't in
take.
shot.
It was my close-up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that's the take.
That was an intense interaction. I mean, what was it like? If we can just linger on that, just that intense scene with Al Pacino.
oh, I'm gonna have your job, shithead. You fucking fairy. It's just like, that whole dressing down by Al Pacino that's probably my favorite part of Glengarry Glen Ross. Okay. I think I might have that as my closer, just to sort of, so we can watch it together and I don't get bit for copyright, because that's such a fucking brilliant scene.
Well, he's the reason I got the movie. A lot of people might think it's because Jack was in the film that he had something to do with it. But actually, I was doing a play called Lost in Yonkers on Broadway. And we had the same dresser who worked with him, a girl named Laura. It was wonderful. Laura Beatty. And she told Al that he should come and see this play because she wanted to see me in this play. I was playing this gangster. It was fun part. So I didn't know Pacino came on some night and saw this play. And then like 3 days later, I got a call to come in and audition for this Glengarry Glen Ross, which of course I knew as a play, David Mamet's play. And then I auditioned. Jamie Foley was the director, who would eventually direct a bunch of House of Cards. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And I got the part. Well, I didn't quite get the part. They were going to bring together the actors that they thought they were going to give the parts to on a Saturday at Al's office. And they asked me if I would come and do a read through. And I said, who's going to be there? And they said, well, so-and-so and so-and-so and so. And then Jack Lemmon is flying in. And I said, don't tell Mr. Lemmon that I'm doing the read through. Is that possible? And they were like, sure. So I'll never forget this. Jack was sitting in a chair in Pacino's office doing the New York Times crossword puzzle as he did every day. And I walked in the door and he went, oh, Jesus Christ. Is it possible you could get a job without me? Jesus Christ. I'm so tired of holding
The other thing people don't talk about nearly enough is Spacey's impersonations are so good. He's so good. Oh my God. He could have been a comedian too. I mean, if that was his wheelhouse, but it's just so funny.
up your end of it. Oh my God, Jesus. So I got the job because of Pacino, and it was really one of the first major roles that I ever had in a film, and to be working with that group.
Yeah, that's like one of the greatest ensemble casts ever. We got Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Alan Arkin, Ed Harris, you, Jonathan Pryce. It's just incredible.
So that's the stuff with Kevin Spacey. I just wanted to share a few of those videos because those are entertaining stories. It gives you great insight, and you can see the passion. You can see that he still wants to work, that he misses it, and it sucks, because again, at the end of the day, it's like the only thing he's really guilty of is like some bad behavior, that could have been just like whatever, his talent is too great to sort of dismiss for what amounts to basically like gay horseplay, like who cares? Like, I'm sorry if that's and to sort of paraphrase Bret Easton Ellis, it's like, if your dreams died because Kevin Spacey pinched your butt, then your dreams weren't worth anything anyway. Like, if you allowed that to get in the way of your dream of becoming whatever, it's just like, okay, then I guess you really didn't have a dream. I guess you're really full of shit. So, but and I'm sorry, but these things have come out where it's just like, oh yeah, these are people that are trying to get money, that saw, quote unquote easy case or whatever. I mean, even the documentary that came out on HBO Max was basically undercut by the fact that he wasn't found guilty. And so, and that's really all you can do. It's in America, it's in the UK. It is what it is. So, two more stories tonight. This is probably going to be one of my longer podcasts, but that's okay. I like to cover stuff. I mean, I know I don't get these out regularly enough, so they could be shorter if I do it more regularly, I suppose. But no, there were these two stories that came out in the last week or so, really the last 2 weeks, that I covered that were pretty interesting. So the first one is this Vince Vaughn article. I guess he's making the rounds because he has a new show on Apple TV. That's kind of why these things end up coming out, opinions, whatever, conversations, interviews. Vince Vaughn says responsible comedies are a snooze fest. Hollywood should let young people go make movies and leave them alone. Preaching to the choir, Mr. Vaughn, preaching to the choir. I've been a fan of Vince Vaughn and his comedies, just in general, his overall career. Because he's done a lot of different stuff. I mean, he started out as more of a serious dramatic actor, pivoted to comedy, and then kind of went back to the serious, darker roles. Certainly his work with S. Craig Zahler is some of my favorite some of my favorite performances of his career. Those movies are incredible. They're incredible touchstones of the 70s exploitation grindhouse era that just leave their mark in the most profound and concrete of ways. So, yeah, he went on a few different platforms to kind of promote his new comedy show on Apple TV, and then the writers just kind of going over, his intro there, which I kind of already did, but let me see here. So yeah, it's okay. So this is more of just a general interview, but we'll kind of get to the questions here. But he's just kind of talking about how he gets shy. He still gets shy with doing interviews, but let's see here. So the body of work that you've created has made such an impact. Is that the path that you've imagined for yourself when you started acting? And he says, well, I think we get the calling to be an actor, especially from the part of the country I was from originally. I'd gotten a SAG card when I was still living outside of Chicago. So when I came to Los Angeles at 18, right after high school, thought it was cool when I got a line on a TV show. That's really cool. I can let my mom know. I don't know that I had a plan that I would even be the lead in films or television. It was just getting better, learning, having experiences, getting to participate. And that's life. I mean, just be active, do something, work towards something. And when you would have something that would become the fabric of the culture, that was always exciting. Obviously, Swingers was a big breakthrough for you. Aside from you and John knowing each other, what about that character made you lock in so well that made it such a remarkable footprint? The thing I think resonated was that there was a genuineness that the guys weren't perfect. Some of the turns that happened, they would handle in a way that I think audiences could relate to because they weren't guys that were necessarily 7 steps ahead. There was a bond of friendship. You had guys that cared about each other and were trying to help each other as they were navigating career and dating and life. And when you're in pursuit of stuff and dating, you're lucky when you have good friends that are wanting what's best for you. Yes. To make sure that you weren't immediately typecast, how calculated were you in choosing projects and following like a cool, dry place, Return to Paradise, and Clay Pigeons? Yeah, I think out of those, I've only seen Return to Paradise, which is one of those like Americans get stopped in a Southeast Asian country and have a death penalty because of drug smuggling. I just picked material I liked. Those were character movies, and I wasn't too focused on trying to sell tickets. Remember my agents at the time saying, you're turning down a lot of these studio movies, and I just didn't like the particular ones they offered. And sometimes I was wrong, but it was just an actor trying to do parts and I thought were interesting. And then it kind of changed with comedy with Todd Phillips. Came to me with Old School. It felt fun and interesting. But by then I remember that he said, the studio's not sure that you can be funny, because I had done mainly dramatic independent movies since Swingers. But obviously, once I did Old School, it opened up this road to these movies that I was excited to participate in that also happened to be very commercial. Yeah, I think Old School is really where he gets that. I don't know what to call it, but his sort of comedic cadence, his sort of speaking method, his tone, the rhythm of it, that kind of thing. Where it's almost like, oh, hey, we can put him in comedy movie. I mean, he almost like did the role a certain way as if to sell himself on future projects. People have often taken a chance on you, like Todd Phillips and Craig Zoller. When there was some commercial doubt, why do you think that is? I had done some stuff when I was younger that wasn't necessarily larger hits, some of them the movies you mentioned, and so I was seen that way, interestingly enough. And I made up my mind as an actor that I wanted to try to do everything, even doing freaky with horror. I wanted to try to do all the different things that were out there. The Zoller stuff was great because that was another thing where you have these movies, again, that get into the culture. When we first released Brawl, reviews were absolutely very strong, but at the time, the distributors were overthinking it. And so they were not willing to jump on board with something that I thought was really fun, good entertainment, and a great story that's challenging. But as time has gone on, those movies have really connected to an audience in a similar way that Swingers did. Swingers was not a big release when it first came out, but it stayed around and people started to connect to it in a more intimate way. I call the way that Zoller does stuff outlaw cinema, but they've connected to an audience in an odd path as well. And that's fun for me. I like trying stuff that isn't trying to go along with what people are going to like or what everyone's trying to do at the time. Even in the making of Swingers, the early meetings we went through used to make us laugh. They were like, can there be a girl in the group? And we thought, Well, if there was a girl in the group, I don't think that these guys would be in the place that they're in. And we were really defiant at that age to tell the story we wanted to tell, thankfully. And we weren't trying to check a bunch of boxes. And the same with the Zoller movie. There was offers to distribute those movies if they cut out 6 minutes or tone down some of the stuff. And it's not what Craig's doing. So I find that a lot of times when you're just trying to create something that you find unique, you end up having a lot more resonance with the audience. You got to take risks. You got to take risks. You got to think outside the box, which of course is a cliche, but it's like you can't just keep making the same shit and not attempt something relatively new. Okay, I'm just going to try to get to the I'm going to get to the comedy. Just reading through the article, the interview here. Okay, so I mean, it's more of a general thing. I mean, I think the headlines more or less made it out about his, his general comments, but um, and this is really the terrible thing about modern headlines is that they don't even get to. I mean, there's a lot of good substance here. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of really good information about his process and being a writer and being, more involved in the production. And, that's great. I think these are things that people want to know about, um, that are interested enough anyway, that want to know, uh, how is this made? Where did you get these ideas from? But that's, it actually requires the audience to be a little bit more interested. So, we'll read a couple more here and wrap up. From John to David Dobkin to Ben Stiller to Peter Billingsley to Craig Zoller, how easy has it been to find people that give you the sense of freedom or protection? It's a bit like dating, isn't it? We're making new friends. I don't know anyone who's like, I really love someone making a character be as polite and evolved as possible. If anything, it's like, can we get away with this? I remember when we first shot Crashers, we were going super R-rated, and we would just do stuff, and it was fun because we were almost making a movie for ourselves to be funny, and there were no parents around. I think that's a big problem now. You've got to let young people go make a movie and leave them alone. They'll figure it out in the end. And part of the fun is you meet people, like the Zoller stuff. Look at how much that has resonated, because there's something that feels provocative in the sense that it's allowing itself to be what it wants to be. It's not worrying about offending anyone. Like Kurt Vonnegut said, if you open a window and try to please everyone, you'll catch pneumonia. I think the stuff that does resonate is always things at least feel like they're being authentic to the piece. They're not trying to code it in a way that feels responsible. It feels like a snooze fest to me. A responsible comedy feels like a time to take a nap. Yeah. And that's really the headline. And tie it back to what Kevin Spacey was saying about, American Beauty. It's inappropriate, being inappropriate. That's the key. The key is it's manners. This is what comedy is based on. And, I've had to sit through like Joyride, that fucking awful piece of shit, like Korean immigrant movie. Oh my God. I mean, that was just a degenerate piece of garbage on every discernible level. And I walked out, 50 minutes in. So comedy's been in a real fucking creative funk for at least a decade, but it's more like 15 years. The last great studio comedy, in my opinion, was The Other Guys, which of course Vince Vaughn was not a part of, and he and Owen Wilson kind of petered out a few movies there, in the late 2000s, the 2010s. But, even that formula was kind of just like, okay, it's just not there anymore. And I grew up in such a rich time for comedies, and like we understood it wasn't serious, and you could do fucked up, raunchy, like sex jokes, but that were actually funny, that were actually amusing. And yeah, it's juvenile, but that's like the point. The point is to be stupid and inappropriate and funny and just have a silly time. Like they used to know how to do this so well, and it's fitting that someone like Norm Macdonald passed away in the last couple of years because, him getting to do dirty work, him getting to be this character in all these Adam Sandler movies and Rob Schneider movies, and like the rich tradition of comedy coming out of Hollywood has been there since the early days, since the silent movies, and it all it has turned into is this lecture circuit, this projection of progressive ideals, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you have no idea, like, oh, I don't know what you mean, I think those movies are funny that are about, like Bottoms and just like, that terrible Pete Davidson movie that I can't think of the name of right now, Bodies, 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 or like it's just like, it's this navel gazing, self-referential, complete dog shit for comedic material. And it's like, oh, I made a reference, that's a joke. No, it's not. That's not a joke. That's not funny. There has to be a contextual reason for it to exist. And if you can't do that, please just stop trying. Judd Apatow wasn't bad there for a while, but even he kind of like succumbed to, oh, we have to listen to the women and the minorities. And it's like, how about just people that are funny? How about that? Remember that, Judd? Huh? You fucking sellout piece of shit. So it's frustrating. Growing up, I loved horror movies and I loved comedies. Like, if you could make me laugh, I don't care what your movie's about. I don't care. You think plot matters? And then, of course, I discovered an older type of comedy. I was like, oh, okay, you actually can do both. It's not just a joke fest. But I mean, that was my adolescence. It was Adam Sandler movies. It was Ben Stiller movies. It was, Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn. Their library, Will Ferrell, like their libraries of movies were just, they were funny. They were consistent. They didn't necessarily have a lot in character or plot, but it didn't matter because it was a laugh a minute kind of thing. More than that, probably, and we just don't have that kind of industry anymore. And to say that it's not it's not following a formula of some kind, that they've gone away from, what used to be known as blue humor. Okay. And instead we get these things that are lectures from people across the I don't know, diverse rainbow of specialness. You know what I mean? It's like you constantly trying to project social values into a fucking comedy. It's just like you're lecturing people that are trying to have a good time and laugh. They don't give a shit. They don't care. It's not what anybody goes to the movies for. And it's like you could be like, oh, I'm just not going to go anymore. And it's like, well, that's already taken care of itself. I mean, plenty of people have stopped going. But yeah, I love the other guys. It came out in 2010. There's been a few things like Tag, which was a genuine surprise. I liked Horrible Bosses, but it kind of wanes a little bit on rewatch, but it's fine. Game Night is a solid movie. I think it's a little overrated. Every time what's her face fucking posts about it, I have to be like, are you serious right now, bitch? Like, have you seen? And then that fucking idiot didn't even see The Fugitive, and she wants to have a fucking movie account on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, go away. Just go away. If you don't know who I'm talking about, just be glad. It's fine. It's for the record, I made fun of oh, Jesus Christ, Michael Tolkien's daughter, the guy that wrote The Player, and I don't know, he wrote other stuff too. Anyway, it's a long story. It's not that long, it's just not that interesting. But yeah, that was fun. And I'll again, swinging it back to the Bret Easton Ellis podcast. Michael Tolkien was a guest like back in 2017. So anyway, that's I might tell that story sometime on a different podcast. But anyway, Vince Vaughn pretty much telling it like it is when it comes to the comedies. They're not what they used to be. There's too much studio involvement. There's too many notes. There's too much obsessing over whether the kids are going to like it. It's like, how about you just let artists create? Just do that. Stop worrying about the risk involved. This is inherently a risky business. Just let the creative people create. I think the rest will take care of itself. Okay. Here's the closer. Okay. James Cameron's a fucking asshole. Okay. He's a fucking dickhead with his head shoved up his ass because he's somebody that is talented. He's a visionary. He has made multiple excellent, high grossing blockbuster movies and things that things that reimagined what the genre could do, that set the tone, that set the bar for what these things, what that meant, what a summer blockbuster meant, and what he was able to produce, through his craftsmanship, through his vision. He has been somewhat of a controversial figure for a while now when it comes to the home video releases of his movies. True Lies, Aliens, The Abyss, the movies that have been recently released on 4K Blu-ray. And the hope was that these were going to get the right treatment. Terminator 2 is another big one. The Terminator 2 4K Blu-ray is one of the worst produced 4Ks in existence. And the fact that it is a action masterpiece like Terminator 2 is really just a slap in the face to all the fans, to all the people patiently waiting for Cameron to remove his head from his sphincter. So he gave an interview about this, or he was asked about it in an interview. Okay, so looks like the Hollywood Reporter was the one who got this, but the question is, so you've also had recently the 4K transfers of Aliens and True Lies that came out. It did get blowback in the fan community, some feeling that the image quality wasn't as high as they wanted it to be. You obviously have a very high standard, so I'm wondering what you thought. This is what James Cameron had to say. When people start reviewing your grain structure, they need to move out of mom's basement and meet somebody, right? I'm serious. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? I've got a great team that does the transfers. I do all the color and density work. I look at every shot, every frame, and then the final transfer is done by a guy who has been with me for years. All the Avatar films are done that way. Everything is done that way. Get a life, people. Seriously. Okay, so, I think that there is a way to sort of delineate what the critics have said and what James Cameron is saying here in a relatively understandable way. And it's this. James Cameron doesn't know what the fuck he's looking at. He's somebody that valued digital over film a long time ago. And he doesn't really care that it's a smooth picture. And this is what we're talking about. The DVD and boutique collector sites that put out reviews, Blu-ray.com, about this stuff, they take their time. They measure this stuff very closely. And they know it doesn't look up to 35 millimeter grain. They know what that's supposed to look like. And you can call them nerds and that they're obsessive. It's like, yeah, James, remember when you were obsessive? Remember when you cared? Remember when you had a iota of temerity, of actual professional skill and ability to discern what it should actually look like in a fucking visual medium, you fucking asshole. Remember that? Remember when you had passion? Yeah, I know. We've all seen Avatar, you fucking fraud. So it's fine. It's fine. James Cameron let go a long time ago, along with David Fincher and a lot of filmmakers that frankly have their own head up their ass about film versus digital. So that's a different conversation. But it's okay. That's fine. You want to tell your own fans that they can go fuck themselves, that you don't care about their concerns, the people that are shelling out money to increase your net worth, you fucking dickhead. That's fine, right? At the end of the day, there are wonderful sites out there that are that are capable of remastering it to how it should look. So those will be available to the people that want them. I am not even a big proponent that, oh, it has to be, it has to have extra grain or visible grain, or it's like, look, even if it was shot on film, not everything is going to have that texture just because it depends where you shoot it. It depends what the lighting is like. It depends on a lot of different factors. So, it's like I got the Once Upon a Time in the West 4K Blu-ray that, oh, there's not enough grain in it because Paramount Presents didn't do it right, or what. I'm trying to think of the guy who I follow and he follows me. It's like the high def, high def report or whatever on Twitter. And he does really good work. He does really good reviews, but I've always felt like, look, I'm just happy that this is on fucking 4K Blu-ray, that it's going to look amazing on an OLED screen and a 4K Blu-ray player. Okay. That's what I care about. Chinatown, Taxi Driver. Man, this year has been amazing for 4K Blu-ray releases. I just wish that someone like James Cameron, who, by the way, this is not the first time shit like this has happened. We didn't get a True Lies disc release. I don't think the DVD existed for years. It was only available on like Laserdisc. So this is a guy who just does not give a shit. He doesn't care. And it's like, I can understand it to a certain degree, but why would you alienate your fans like that? You know what I mean? And so, and look, Avatar 2 making whatever it was, $2 billion. Like, I guess I can understand not really giving a shit anymore. And look, this is a man who he talks about getting out of your mom's basement. James, you married Linda Hamilton and Catherine Bigelow. Okay. I literally shut the fuck up, dude. Look at your own fucking past history. Literally, that's the best you could do. And then literally Catherine Bigelow made a career out of making, making men, making movies for men, basically. The Hurt Locker one, it's a war movie. She made Strange Days, which is like a science fiction movie. She made, was it After Dark? It's not After Dark, but it's the vampire movie, with Bill Paxton. Yeah. So it's just Near Dark is what it is. Like, just came to me. You know what I mean? And so it's like, what are we even talking about here, James? You haven't put out a decent film in, holy shit, since True Lies, 1994. Damn, dude. So whatever. His best days are behind him. It's fine, but you're spitting in the face of the people that are continuing to increase your net worth and your own personal fortune. So ultimately, it's disappointing that a filmmaker is so blatantly dismissive of genuine concerns. But um, I know what movies I'm not getting on 4K Blu-ray. That's for sure. But look, Alien is superior to Aliens. And I mean, True Lies is pretty good. It's kind of a James Bond spoof without being a James Bond spoof. It's pretty funny. But it's also just a good action movie, good gunplay, good performance by Arnie. And The Terminator is supposed to come out this year on 4K. Terminator 2. I mean, these are movies that beg to be seen on the best screen with the best disc, the best visual components, and yet the man doesn't give a shit. So, it's sort of even among those people who review it, it's sort of out of their hands at this point. But that's going to do it here for not terribly important for 12. I think I did a pretty good job kind of covering all the things I wanted to get to. Actually felt like a podcast to some degree. I try not to ramble too much, but I like talking about movies. I like talking about film production and screenwriting, actors, everything that it kind of encompasses and is made up of. So thank you for coming by and checking it out. I think we are going to end the night on that scene from Glengarry Glen Ross, though. So it'll be our little goodbye. I've seen that movie like probably 40 times. I make sure to watch it. I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times every year. You know, I love it so much. I love the interpersonal dynamics between the actors and the characters. Just fantastic. So we'll close out on Ricky Roma dressing down Kevin Spacey here, and I'll try not to get flagged for copyright. All right. Okay. So basically here, just to set this scene up, this is Kevin Spacey just fucking blew the deal. It just cost him like $50,000 in commission. Not to mention the Cadillac that he was going to win for being number 1 on the board for the month.
You stupid fucking cunt.
You stupid fucking cunt.
You, Williamson, I'm talking to you, shithead. You just cost me $6,000.
Oh, okay, $6,000. Sorry.
6,000.
Hey, with inflation, that's like, hey, you don't know. I don't know. It's like probably fucking 17 or something like that.
$1,000 and 1 Cadillac. That's right. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it, asshole?
What are you gonna do about it? Taps his foot. What are you gonna do about it, asshole?
You fucking shit. Where did you learn your trade, you stupid fucking cunt, you idiot? Whoever told you that you could work with men?
Could I?
Oh, I'm gonna have your job, shithead. I'm going downtown. I'm gonna talk to Mitch and Murray. I'm going to Lemkin. I don't care whose nephew you are, who you know, whose dick you're sucking on. You're going out. I swear to you, you're going.
Let's get this done.
Elevated train going by, breaking up the dialogue.
Anyone in this office lives on his wits. I'm gonna be with you in a second. What you're hired for is to help us. Here to you. To help us, not to fuck us up. To help men who are going out there to try to earn a living, you fairy. You company man.
And this is why this movie is it's just a microcosm of the working class. It's like, you know, we're out there breaking our fucking necks. We're breaking a sweat. We're busting our fucking ass. And you go and you open your fucking mouth and take it all away, you piece of shit.
I'll tell you something else. I hope you rip the joint off. I can tell our friend here a little something might help him to catch you. You want to learn the first rule you'd know if you ever spent a day in your life. You never open your mouth till you know what the shot is. You fucking child.
All right. And that is going to do it for tonight. Once again, thank you for everybody for coming along. There were 25 of you. I appreciate it. No comments tonight, which is fine. It's fine. No, you know, so it's I just appreciate the news and having an audience. I like to talk about movies. This is what I do. And that's pretty much what this podcast is going to be about. It's like I've always been trying to kind of get something off the ground where I and hopefully I can do this regularly, as I sound like a broken record here, but made it about 2 hours, 15 minutes tonight. You guys have a good night. I will be back again next week with, I'm sure, another slate of topics. And yeah, so we'll see you at the movies or something. I don't know. I'll figure out a way to start and end the show in a more in a less abrupt manner. So, you know, look forward to that.